Rawan. The sky above Geneva was gray that morning, heavy with clouds that refused to break. Inside the domed chamber of the Unified Planetary Assembly, the air hummed with tension. Delegates from every nation sat in silence, their faces lit by the soft glow of holographic displays. At the center of it all stood Daniel Brooks, President of Earth, his hands resting lightly on the polished stone podium. He did not look tired, though he had not slept in 36 hours. His eyes were steady, his voice calm when he finally spoke. 3 days ago, he began, the Galactic Council sent us a message, not a request, not a discussion, an order. He paused, letting the words sink in. They told us to shut down every defense system that reaches beyond our atmosphere. They told us to allow their inspectors full access to our cities, our labs, our military bases. And they gave us 30 days to obey or face consequences. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates shifted in their seats. Others stared straight ahead, jaws tight. Everyone knew what consequences meant. The Council had used that word only twice before in its 10,000-year history. Both times, entire civilizations had vanished from the star charts, Daniel continued. For over a century, we've watched them. We've listened to their broadcasts, studied their ships from afar, decoded fragments of their language. We've seen how they treat young species, how they guide them, control them, decide when they're ready to join the galaxy. And every time that readiness comes with surrender. He stepped away from the podium and walked slowly along the front row, making eye contact with each delegate. Earth is not a child. We built cities from dust. We healed our oceans. We ended wars that once seemed endless. We reached Mars, then Jupiter, then the edge of our own solar system. Not with weapons, but with curiosity. And now, after all that, they expect us to kneel. No one answered. But the silence had changed. It was no longer fearful. It was firm. Later that day, the vote was called. One by one, every nation cast its ballot. Not a single dissent. Earth would not comply. The message was sent back through the quantum relay station on Luna. We decline your terms. We will defend our sovereignty. We ask only to be left in peace. The reply came faster than anyone expected. 2 hours after Earth's response, 3 silver vessels appeared in high orbit above the moon. They were sleek and silent, shaped like teardrops frozen in motion. No markings, no signals, just presence. The Council envoys had arrived. On Luna Base Alpha, Lena Foster stood at the observation deck, her arms crossed, watching the alien ships through reinforced glass. She was 32, with short brown hair and grease still under her fingernails from fixing a coolant leak that morning. She wasn't a diplomat or a soldier, just an orbital systems engineer. But she knew what those ships meant. They weren't here to talk. Her supervisor, Commander Ruiz, stood beside her. Orders are clear, he said quietly. If they try to scan Earth's defenses, we're to power down the grid. Avoid provocation. Lena didn't look at him. And if they decide we're unready and start beaming people off the surface, like they did to the Zentari? Ruiz didn't answer. The Zentari had been erased from history 1,000 years ago, wiped clean after refusing Council oversight. Their planet was now a nature preserve, empty and silent. Lena turned away from the window. I'm not shutting it down. You don't have a choice, Ruiz said. I do, she replied. The grid's under my control until the next shift, and I say it stays on. Back on Earth, news of the envoy's arrival spread quickly. Crowds gathered in city squares, not in panic but in quiet solidarity. In New York, students held vigils with candles shaped like Earth. In Nairobi, musicians played old songs of resistance. In Mumbai, families shared meals on rooftops, watching the stars as if expecting something to fall from them. President Brooks addressed the world that evening from the Assembly Gardens. No podium this time, just him, a single light and the night sky behind him. They think we're weak because we're young, he said. They think we'll fold because we've never fought a war among the stars. But they forget one thing. We've already survived our own darkness. We chose unity over division. We chose hope over fear. And now we choose dignity over submission. His words were broadcast to every continent, every colony, every ship in orbit. Even the mining outposts on Ceres paused their drills to listen. On Luna, Lena sat in the control room, her fingers hovering over the console. The grid, Earth's network of orbital defense satellites, energy shields, and sensor arrays, was humming softly. It wasn't built for war. It was built to deflect asteroids. monitor solar flares, protect habitats, but it could be repurposed. She knew that, and so did the Council. One of the silver ships tilted slightly, aiming a narrow beam toward Earth's surface. A scan, non-invasive but unmistakable. They were testing her. Lena took a deep breath. Then she pressed a sequence of keys, bypassing the shutdown protocol. The grid flared to full power, its emitters glowing faint blue across the night side of the planet. Not an attack, just a signal. A warning. The silver ship stopped scanning. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly all three vessels turned and accelerated away, vanishing into the void beyond the moon. Lena exhaled. Her hands were shaking. Down on Earth, people didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They simply looked up at the sky and understood. The line had been drawn. The Galactic Council would not forget this. They would not forgive it. But for the first time in centuries, someone had said no, and meant it. And somewhere in the silent corridors of alien capitals, across 1,000 worlds that had long accepted their place in the cosmic order, a single question began to spread like a whisper. If Earth can defy them, why can't we? Part 2. News of Earth's refusal traveled faster than any ship could fly. It moved through the galaxy's quantum message lanes like a ripple in still water, touching every world that listened to the Council's broadcasts. At first, most species didn't believe it. Earth was a young planet, barely out of its atmospheric cradle. It had no fleet, no ancient alliances, no seat at the High Conclave. Yet it had looked the Council in the eye and said no. On the trade hub of Vexus Prime, merchants paused mid-deal. In the crystal libraries of Orlan 7, scholars stopped copying scrolls to whisper in corners. Even the silent monks of the Cathari Belt, who had not spoken in centuries, opened their comms for the first time in generations. Everywhere, the same question formed. What happens now? The Council tried to control the story. Official channels declared Earth's actions regrettable but manageable. They claimed the situation was under review. But their silence spoke louder than words. For the first time in memory, the Council had been challenged and had backed away. On Mars Colony Theta, Kyle Dawson stood in the training bay watching a group of cadets stumble through a zero-gravity combat drill. He was 35, lean and sunburned from too many hours in the red dust outside. His flight suit was patched. At the elbows, his boots scuffed from years of hard landings. He wasn't supposed to be an instructor. He was a pilot, one of the best Earth had. But with tensions rising, every able body was needed to prepare. Again, he called out, his voice rough but calm. Slow isn't safe. Hesitation gets you killed. The cadets reset, their movements sharper this time. Kyle watched them, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd seen the silver ships on the news feeds. He'd heard President Brooks's speech. And he knew deep in his gut that war wasn't coming. It was already here. Not with explosions and fire, not yet. But with silence. With waiting. With the kind of dread that builds in your bones when you know something huge is about to break. Back on Earth, in a quiet lab buried beneath the Pacific Ocean, Nora Ellis adjusted the settings on her hydroacoustic array. She was a marine biologist, not a soldier, but her work had taken a strange turn. 2 weeks ago, her deep-sea sensors had picked up a low-frequency hum from the Mariana Trench, something that didn't match any known geological or biological source. It pulsed in perfect rhythm like a heartbeat, and it only appeared after Earth rejected the Council's ultimatum. At first, she thought it was interference. Then she cross-referenced data from other ocean labs. The signal was global, same frequency, same timing. Every pulse matched the rotation of Earth itself. She reported it to the Planetary Science Directorate, expecting to be told it was a glitch. Instead, they sent a security team and sealed her lab. Within hours, engineers from Luna Base arrived, led by a woman named Lena Foster. They didn't ask many questions, they just listened to the signal, then exchanged looks that said everything. "It's not natural," Lena said finally. "It's a response." "A response to what?" Nora asked. "To the threat," Lena replied. I think Earth has a defense system we never knew about and it just woke up." The idea sounded impossible. But the data didn't lie. The pulses were growing stronger. And when Lena ran a simulation, she found something astonishing. The energy patterns matched theoretical models of quantum-entangled neutrino fields, something human science had only dreamed of. Yet here it was, rising from the ocean floor like a sleeping giant stirring. Meanwhile, across the solar system, life went on, but quieter, tenser. On Titan Station, Marcus Bell worked the night shift in the comms array. He was 28, with a dry sense of humor and a habit of chewing synth gum until it lost all flavor. His job was simple: monitor deep space signals, filter out noise, log anything unusual. Lately, unusual had become the norm. Alien traffic had dropped by 80%. Trade convoys rerouted. Diplomatic channels went dark. And then, 3 days ago, he'd picked up a fragmented burst from the outer rim, a Qatari freighter sending a distress call. Not to the Council, to Earth. Marcus had reported it immediately. The message was garbled, but one phrase repeated: "You showed us it's possible." He didn't understand it at first, but when he played it back to his supervisor, the older man just shook his head and said, "They're watching us now. All of them." Back on Mars, Kyle finished the training session and walked alone to the observation dome. The red planet stretched out below him, cold and beautiful. He thought about his sister, who lived in Denver. He thought about the old Earth, forests, oceans, rain on his face. Would any of it survive what was coming? He didn't know. But he knew one thing. If the Council came back, they wouldn't send envoys next time. They'd send weapons, and Earth had no fleet to meet them. Unless... He remembered rumors from the early days of spaceflight, whispers of hidden projects, of tech buried in lunar caves, of experiments that vanished from official records. Maybe some of it was true. Maybe humanity had more than it let on. On Earth, President Brooks met with his advisors in a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. No windows, no signals in or out, just cold stone and hard choices. "We can't fight them head on," said General Hayes, a woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. "Their ships outclass ours by centuries." "But we don't have to win a fight," Brooks replied. "We just have to make the cost too high. If they think destroying us will be easy, they'll do it. If they think it'll break them, they might hesitate." "And if they don't?" asked Dr. Lin, the lead scientist from the ocean lab. "Then we fall," Brooks said simply. "But we fall standing." That night, Nora Ellis stayed late in her lab. The hum from the trench had changed. It wasn't just pulsing anymore. It was weaving, forming patterns that looked almost like language. She ran it through every decoder she had. Nothing matched. But when she synced it with Lena's orbital shield data, the two signals locked together like keys turning in the same lock. Something ancient was awake. Something built not by humans, but for them. Or maybe by them long ago and forgotten. In orbit, the defense grid hummed in harmony with the ocean's song. On Mars, Kyle stared at the stars and wondered if they were watching back. On Titan, Marcus listened to the silence between the stars and heard something new: hope. The galaxy held its breath, and Earth, small and stubborn, stood ready. Part 3. The attack came without warning. One moment the solar system was quiet. The next, space itself seemed to tear open near Jupiter's orbit. From the rift emerged a single ship, long, black, and smooth like polished stone. It gave off no heat, no light, no signal. It simply was. The Celestial Accord had arrived. People on Earth saw it on their screens, in news feeds, in sky watches. No one panicked. They had been waiting. They knew this was coming. The ship did not fire weapons. It did not send a message demanding surrender. Instead, it released a pulse, a wave of distorted time that rolled silently toward Earth. Scientists in orbit labs called it a chronoton surge. It wasn't meant to destroy cities or kill people. It was meant to erase humanity's future, to rewind Earth's timeline to a point before spaceflight, before radio, before even electricity. A gentle reset, a quiet erasure. The Council's favorite tool for unruly young species, but the pulse never reached the surface. As it crossed the orbit of Mars, something answered. From the deep ocean trenches, from the magnetic poles, from hidden nodes buried in the crust, Earth's defense system flared to life. Blue light shimmered across the planet like a second atmosphere. The chronoton wave hit the barrier and shattered. Not reflected, not blocked, unmade. The energy dissolved into harmless static, scattering into the void like dust in the wind. On Luna Base, Lena Foster watched the readings spike and fall. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. From awe. It worked, she whispered. It actually worked. Down in the Pacific lab, Nora Ellis stared at her monitors as the ocean hum rose to a clear, steady tone. The signal was no longer just a pulse. It was a shield. A living shield woven from Earth itself. The black ship hung motionless for a long moment. Then, for the first time in recorded history, a vessel of the Celestial Accord made a mistake. It fired again. A stronger pulse. A second attempt. This time, Earth did not just defend. It responded. The planetary shield rippled outward, not as a wall but as a wave. It passed through the black ship like a ghost. Nothing exploded. No fire lit the sky, but every system aboard the vessel went dark. Lights died. Engines froze. Even the artificial gravity failed. Inside, the Council enforcers, tall, silver-eyed beings who had never known defeat, floated helplessly in silence. Their tech useless, their certainty broken. Across the galaxy, the effect was immediate. The quantum lanes flickered. Faster than light travel stuttered. Ships dropped out of warp near Earth's system, stranded. Trade routes collapsed. Alarms blared on 100 worlds as navigation systems failed. Not from damage, but from something deeper. A disruption in the very fabric of space-time that Earth's shield had touched. Panic spread. On Vexus Prime, merchants shouted as their cargo ships hung dead in orbit. On Orlan 7, scholars dropped their scrolls in shock as their ancient data crystals went blank. Even the Cathari monks broke their silence, sending urgent queries through every open channel. What did Earth do? Back on Mars, Kyle Dawson stood in the command center of Colony Theta, watching the feed from Earth orbit. He saw the black ship drift, powerless. He saw the blue glow fade slowly back into the planet's skin. And he knew this changed everything. They thought we were just another species to manage, he said to no one in particular. Now they know we're something else. President Brooks addressed the world again that night. Not from a garden this time, but from the war room beneath the mountains. His face was tired, but his voice was strong. They tried to take our future, he said, but Earth protects its own. We did not build this shield. We did not design it. But it rose when we needed it. Because this planet, our home, has always been more than rock and water. It is alive with memory, with will, and today it chose to stand with us. The message was broadcast not just to Earth, but to every listening ear in the galaxy. And many were listening. On Titan Station, Marcus Bell intercepted a flood of alien chatter. Most of it was frantic, reports of system failures, demands for answers. But one signal stood out. It came from the edge of Qatari space, a single line repeated in broken standard, "Tell Earth, thank you." He played it 3 times before forwarding it to command. His hands were shaking. Meanwhile, the black ship remained in orbit, silent and dark. Earth made no move to board it or destroy it. They simply left it there, a monument to failure floating above Jupiter like a warning. Lena and Nora were brought together in a secure facility near Geneva. Engineers, scientists, and military leaders filled the room, but all eyes were on them. They were the ones who had seen it first, who had listened when others dismissed the hum, the pulse, the impossible. "We don't control it," Nora said plainly. "We can't turn it on or off like a switch. It reacts, it protects, but it's not a weapon. Not really." "Then what is it?" asked General Hayes. Lena looked at the live feed of the drifting black ship. "It's a boundary," she said. "A line Earth draws around itself. Cross it with harm in your heart and you lose your power. Not because we took it, but because the planet won't allow it." No one argued. The evidence was in the sky. In the days that followed, more ships arrived, but not to fight. Scouts from neutral systems, curious envoys from fringe worlds, even a delegation from the Varelian hegemony, long known for their quiet dissent against the Council. They came to see for themselves. To witness the planet that had broken the unbreakable Earth. Let them watch. Let them scan. Let them wonder. And as they did, something new began to grow in the galaxy. Not just fear of Earth, but respect, hope. The first green shoots of rebellion. For the first time, the Council's rule felt fragile, not because Earth had fired a shot, but because it had shown that power could be met with something deeper than force. With unity, with trust in something older than technology, the cosmos held its breath again. But this time it was not waiting for destruction. It was waiting for change, and Earth, small and steady, stood at the center of it all. Part 4. The galaxy did not explode into open war. It unraveled slowly, like a thread pulled from an old tapestry. One by one, the pieces began to come loose. The Varelian hegemony was first. They stopped sending tribute ships to the Council's central hub. Then the Qatari Collective halted all data-sharing agreements. Within weeks, 7 more systems followed, not with weapons, but with silence. With absence. The Council's authority, once absolute, now had cracks running through it. On Earth, life changed too. The old divisions, nations, borders, old grudges, faded faster than anyone expected. People worked together not because they were ordered to, but because they had to. Because they wanted to. Factories that once built cars now assembled shield relays. Schools taught orbital mechanics alongside history. Even children knew the names Lena Foster and Nora Ellis not as heroes, but as reminders that listening could be as powerful as fighting. President Brooks stood before the Unified Planetary Assembly again, but this time the mood was different. Not fear. Not defiance. Purpose. He announced the formation of the Terran Defense Coalition, a single command structure linking Earth, Mars, Luna, Titan, and every outpost in between. No more separate armies, no more competing interest, one voice. One Will Kyle Dawson was named flight commander of the new Mars wing. He didn't ask for the job. He didn't want it, but he took it because someone had to lead the cadets he'd trained into whatever came next. His first order was simple: prepare for reconnaissance, not combat. We're not here to start fights, he told his pilots. We're here to show we're ready if one comes to us. Meanwhile, deep in the ocean lab, Lena and Nora worked side by side. They had learned to read the planet's hum like a language. It wasn't words, but patterns. Shifts in frequency that warned of approaching ships. Surges that matched solar flares. Rhythms that synced with Earth's magnetic field. The shield wasn't just defense. It was a nervous system, and Earth was its mind. They discovered something else too. The system could be guided, not controlled but gently nudged. By sending specific harmonic signals from orbital stations, they could shape the shield's response. They tested it on a derelict satellite near Neptune. When they pulsed the right tone, the shield reached out, wrapped around the metal husk, and disabled its power core without a spark. It was precise, clean, non-violent. That's how we'll fight, Lena said. Not by destroying, but by disarming. Nora nodded. We protect, but we don't punish. Their work caught the attention of Marcus Bell on Titan Station. He had been tracking strange energy echoes bouncing off the outer planets. Ripples from Earth's shield interacting with cosmic dust. But one signal didn't fit. It came from Saturn's rings. Faint but repeating. Not natural. Not human, he reported it. Within hours, a small team was dispatched, led by Kyle himself. They flew a stealth scout ship, painted black and silent as space itself. When they reached the source, a narrow gap in the B ring, they found it. A crashed vessel. Not Council. Not human. Smaller, older, covered in symbols no one recognized. Inside, the ship was empty, but its logs were intact. Marcus helped decode them from Titan. The language was alien, but the story was clear. This ship belonged to a species called the Xanthari, the same ones erased by the Council 1,000 years ago. They hadn't been wiped out. They'd been hidden. And before they vanished, they'd sent this ship as a warning. The log showed footage of Council enforcers altering planetary climates, rewriting DNA, erasing memories. They didn't just control young species. They shaped them, pruned them, kept them small and obedient. Evolution wasn't natural under the Council. It was managed, designed. Kyle sent the data straight to Earth. Within minutes, it was shared with every human outpost and then, deliberately, leaked into open galactic channels. The effect was immediate. On Orlan 7, scholars compared the Xanthari records with their own ancient texts. Matches appeared. On Vexus Prime, traders realized their natural trade instincts had been subtly influenced by Council-approved education modules. Even the Qatari monks found gaps in their lineage, missing generations, rewritten histories. The truth spread like fire in dry grass. Rebellion was no longer just a whisper. It became a roar. Back on Earth, President Brooks faced a new kind of pressure. Not from enemies, but from allies. Species that had never spoken to humans before now sent messages. Pleas for help, offers of alliance, requests for guidance. Earth had become a symbol, not of power, but of freedom. Lena and Nora were asked to speak at the first open galactic forum held outside Council space. They stood on a floating platform near Mars, surrounded by beings of a dozen shapes and colors. Lena held up a small device that played Earth's hum. "This isn't ours," she said. "It belongs to the planet, and it answers only to one rule. Do no harm, and you will not be harmed." A Varelian delegate stepped forward. "Can it protect others?" Nora shook her head. "It's tied to Earth, but the idea can spread. You don't need a shield like ours. You just need to stand together, to say no." That night, 3 more systems cut ties with the Council. On Titan, Marcus intercepted a final message from the black ship still drifting near Jupiter. It was weak, barely a whisper. But it was clear. The enforcers aboard had activated an emergency beacon, not to call for help but to send a confession. They admitted the Council had lied for millennia, that they feared chaos more than cruelty, that they believed control was the only way to keep the galaxy safe. The message ended with 3 words: "We were wrong." Earth did not gloat. They simply archived the message and broadcast it to all. In the quiet that followed, something new began to form. Not an empire, not a rebellion, but a network. A web of species choosing their own paths, sharing knowledge, protecting each other not with weapons but with truth. And at the heart of it all stood Earth, small, blue, and unbroken. Not because it was the strongest, but because it had remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. That dignity is worth defending, even when the odds are impossible. The war was not over. But the fear was gone. And that changed everything. Part 5. The Council did not send another warship. They sent a message. Short, formal, and signed by every elder race that still held a seat in the High Conclave. They requested talks, not demands, not terms, talks. And they asked for them to happen at Epsilon Drift, a neutral station floating between star systems. Built centuries ago for exactly this kind of moment, when words mattered more than weapons. Earth agreed, but not on the Council's schedule, not under their rules. President Brooks made it clear, Earth would come, but only as equals. No observers, no hidden recorders, and Earth would bring its own team, 4 people, no more. Daniel Brooks himself would lead them. With him would be Lena Foster, Nora Ellis, and Kyle Dawson. No generals. No diplomats trained in old games. Just people who had lived through what Earth had faced. The journey to Epsilon Drift took 10 days. The station was shaped like a silver ring, spinning slowly against the star field. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and old metal. Corridors curved in gentle arcs lit by soft white panels. It was quiet. Too quiet. The usual bustle of traders and travelers was gone. Only a few species remained, those brave enough or desperate, enough to witness what might be the end or the beginning of everything. The Council delegation arrived first. Tall figures in flowing robes, their faces calm, their eyes unreadable. They did not speak as Earth's team stepped off their shuttle. They simply waited. The meeting room was round, with no head of the table. Good, Brooks thought. That was a start. He spoke first. Not with anger, not with pride, but with clarity. "We are not here to replace you," he said. "We are here to change how you see us, and how you see yourselves. For too long, the Council has decided who is ready, who is wise, who deserves a voice. That ends now." One of the elders, a being with skin like polished bark, leaned forward. "You speak of chaos. Without guidance, young species destroy themselves. We have seen it." "Then guide," Brooks replied. "Don't control. Teach. Don't erase. Offer help. Don't demand obedience. There's a difference." Lena stood then. She held a small sphere that pulsed with soft blue light, the same frequency as Earth's shield. "This isn't a weapon," she said. "It's a promise. A promise that a planet can protect itself without hurting others. You could build something like this too, not with force, but with trust in your own world." Nora added, "Life finds its own way. You don't need to shape it. You just need to let it grow." Kyle said nothing at first. Then he placed a data chip on the table. "This is the Zenthari record, and the confessions from your own enforcers. The truth is out. You can't hide it anymore. So the question isn't whether you keep control. It's whether you join something new." Silence filled the room. Not the silence of judgment, but of thought. Of real thought for the first time in centuries. Days passed. Talks stretched into nights. Not all the elders agreed. Some walked out. But others stayed. And slowly a new idea took shape. Earth proposed a charter. Simple rules. No species would be judged unready by outsiders. No world would be forced to surrender its sovereignty. Advancement would be self-determined. And any system could call for a review if they felt the old ways were returning. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. In the end, the council did not dissolve. It transformed. The High Conclave became the assembly of equals. Earth was not punished. It was invited to help build what came next. And not just Earth. Virelians, Katari, Orlans, even the quiet monks of Cathari Belt sent representatives. For the first time, the galaxy would be run not by a few, but by many. On the day the new charter was signed, Earth's team stood on the observation deck of Epsilon Drift. Below them, ships from a dozen worlds exchanged signals, not threats. Trade routes reopened, but now with shared oversight. Data flowed freely. Old secrets began to heal. Back on Earth, people did not celebrate with fireworks. They gathered in parks, in labs, in quiet homes. They looked up at the sky and felt something new, not fear of what was out there, but connection to it. Lena returned to Luna Base, not as an engineer hiding in shadows, but as Earth's first ambassador to the Orbital Alliance. Nora went back to her ocean lab, now working with scientists from 3 other species to study planetary resonance. Kyle took command of a new joint patrol fleet, human, Virelian, and Katari pilots flying together not as soldiers but as guardians. President Brooks stepped down a year later. Not because he was tired, but because the world no longer needed a wartime leader. He walked the streets of Geneva like any other citizen, buying coffee, talking to students, watching children play under open skies. The cosmos did not become peaceful overnight. Old habits died hard. Some systems still clung to the old ways. But the balance had shifted. The myth of the Council's infallibility was broken, and in its place grew something fragile but real: trust. Years later, when the first non-human child was born on Mars, a Katari infant, welcomed by human doctors and Virelian elders, people remembered that moment at Epsilon Drift, not as a victory, but as a choice. The choice to believe that even the smallest voice matters, that even the youngest species deserves a seat at the table. Earth had not won a war. It had reminded the galaxy of its own soul, and as starships from 100 worlds passed through human space, they no longer scanned for weapons. They listened for the hum, the quiet song of a planet that chose to stand, not to conquer, but to protect, to hope, to belong. The panic was gone. In its place was something far more powerful: peace, built not on fear but on freedom. And it all began because one world, small and blue, dared to say no.